Okay, so I think the fundamentals that we need to remember from yesterday are the basics. We know there's four methods of discharging Zika. The derisidic ones, which are the ones that technically work, are Bia, which is the Yibum, or B, or Chalitza, which eliminates the Zika. Midirabanan, or Midaraisa, get, and Mimer, which is Kedushin, have absolutely no impact whatsoever on the Zika. However, Midrabanan is said it should have an impact, and there's a reason for it. So the reason why they said that get should have an impact is because people know that get severs a relationship, and people know that Chalita severs a relationship. If we would treat get like the Daraisa function, in other words, ignore it, and if someone gave a get to a woman who was to him, we would totally ignore it and then let him do yibum afterwards. Well, then people would mistakenly think that chalitza, you're also allowed to do yibum afterwards, because from their perspective, if a get didn't break the zika, the chalitza wouldn't break the zika, because to them a get and chalitza would be similar, and it would lead to chas v'sholom someone doing yibum after chalitza was done, which is an Israel. Now, when I say some people would get confused, I mean us. Chazal made their gzeirah for us. People get confused. So that's the reason why they said that get midrabanan disqualifies this zika from ever going to yibum. Okay, that's the gzeirah they made with get. Now, mimer, why did they give validity to a kedushin? When we derive, if you're mekadosh, you're one of the yavamas. If you're mekadosh yavama, it has zero impact. There should be no kinyan whatsoever. Once again, they said the reason why it has validity is because from their perspective, from a typical person's perspective, mimer kedushin is normally kaina woman, and B is kaina woman. So they don't make a distinction between how you were kaina the woman, whether it was with mimer or whether it was with bia. Now, if someone made bia on one woman, he for surely couldn't make bia on another woman. Thank you very much, Mati. If there are two yavamas and someone made mimer on one woman, then the other woman is also to him b'Yisrael shazach. He wouldn't be able to make mimer to the other co-wife. I'm mixing this up. Bia, if someone made yibum on the first yavama, one would not be able to make yibum on the second yavama. That would be a very serious issur. And people were going to say, well, if you ignore mimer completely, and someone made mimer on almana A, we allow him to then go make bia on almana B, because we don't recognize kedushin in the case of zika. Well, then people will mistakenly think that even if you make bia to almana A, you're allowed to make bia to almana B. So to avoid those problems, they gave mimer validity and they gave get validity.
What's the technical difference between somebody who does mimer and someone who does a yibum? In other words, is there a ceremony? In other words, how do you do yibum? Is there, do you say something? Do you do something? How do you do mimer?
We're going to discuss yibum. Yibum means if by any way or means a man was boil a woman, even if he fell on her and it happened, in other words, completely not with his kavanah, not with her kavanah, yibum is kain.
But what is the act of yibum? Is that the bia?
Yes.
And the act of a mimer, is that bia?
No, mimer is saying haret mukadeshli.
Oh, you have to actually say, so it's a kedushin.
It's a regular kedushin. So why is it called mimer? Why isn't it called kedushin?
Right.
Because there's a whole bunch of different reasons that the Charedim offer as to why it's called mimer. One of them is because it's mimer. It's told to us by Chazal, but it's not an actual kedushin. And I think it's important that that distinction is made, because mimer has to be clear. It's only midrabanan. Midaraisa has zero validity. Kedushin on a regular woman, not on a young, that makes her into an Eshes Ish. Kedushin makes a woman into an Eshes Ish, but Kedushin to Yavama does absolutely nothing. So the Rabban. So now the question is now that the Rabban said that get works and that mimer works, or I shouldn't say work, I should say has an impact. Now that the Rabban said that get has an impact, that mimer has an impact, here's where we have a machlokes between Rabbi Gamliel and the Rabbanan. And Rabbi Gamliel learns that in every case of Yibum, there's the men's side and there's the ladies' side. When I say the ladies' side, there could be one almana, there could be 10 almanas. There could be one brother or 10 brothers, right? So according to Rabbi Gamliel, each relationship between the men and the women have one seat available for get and one seat available for zika. Zok Rabbi Yehuda, once the seat for the get is taken, there's no room for any other get to work. So therefore, he holds ein get acher get, and the same thing on the mimer side. But you could have get acher mimer or mimer acher get because there's room for get and there's room for mimer in each relationship. The Rabbanan say yesh get acher get, yesh mimer acher mimer, and they look at it is that in every woman who falls to yibum, so if there's 10 almanas who fail to yibum from one husband, no wonder he died. if there are multiple women who fell to yibum from one husband, each of them have a get seat and a mimer seat for every one of the men. So they become like a full stadium almost. But that means you can have get acher get and you can have mimer acher mimer. Those were the fundamentals of what we learned yesterday. Okay. So that took us to the bottom of Nun Aleph Amud Beis. At the end of the Gemara noted that according to Rabbi Gamliel, we say ein mimer acher mimer. Ein mimer acher mimer means that the first mimer is powerful, that it leaves no room for any other mimer to be chal after it. So the Gemara just said this concept of having a serious mimer is echoed by other Tanoim, but not in precisely the same way as Rabbi Gamliel said it. But there's 4 Tanoim that all in a certain way gave a certain strength to mimer. And the Gemara brought some shittas that we were familiar with, like Rabbi Nechemiah in our Mishnah, and then the Gemara brought down Ben Azai and Rabbi Shimon. And we also learned a new fact yesterday that a faulty bia, the Rabbanan gave it the validity of a mimer. So if you're talking about the bia of a ben tesha of Yomechad, meaning a 9-year-old child who does bia, that's midaraisa, not a good bia to be kind. But the Rabbanan give it the validity of a mimer, and we also learned that a bia psula, meaning a bia that was after a get, would also have the validity of a mimer. So those were the fundamentals of what we learned yesterday. And now today, Baruch Hashem, will be a much more simple daf. We won't have these Reb Chaim svaras in the Gemara, splitting, making a woman into a stadium.
I wasn't believed when I heard you say that the parts of the women have a few split a woman into parts. That's what you said.
Don't say that so loud. Okay, so the Gemara. Now the Gemara is going to go back to analyze the Mishnah. So it's very funny because the Mishnah says we're going to explain the following, and then it explains something totally different. So look what it says. We want to explain in the Mishnah the halacha of ein mimer acher mimer and ein get acher get, and then it says Keitza. Let's explain ein mimer acher mimer or ein get acher get, and then it says also mimer b'yivim toiv nasan laget. So you just told me that we're going to elaborate on the sugya of get acher get and mimer acher mimer, and instead you start talking about something completely different, mimer acher get. So that's the Gemara's first kasha. Frag the Gemara, hi, get acher getu. Is this what you call get acher get? It's get acher mimer. So what's pshat in the Gemara? The Gemara's title is to elaborate on what we just said before, yet the Gemara goes off into a different direction. I'm Rabbi Yehuda Hachi Kamar, get acher get, mimer acher mimer kid amran. Get acher get, the mimer acher mimer is, as we spoke about earlier, which we are not going to elaborate on. Ketzad, we are going to elaborate on something else. Yovam echad, vivam achas ketzad, hatarasan, how does the woman become mutter? So basically all it's telling us is is before the Ketzad. In the Mishnah, put 3 dots and dot, dot, dot. In other words, you could figure out the conclusion, and then the Ketzad is a new subject. Also, Maimer Ubal Harezu Kimitzvasa. The Mishnah seems to be saying that the ultimate way to do Yibum is first to do Maimer, which is a little bit of a fascinating thing. And we're going to learn in the Gemara that that is the right way to do it. If that was the right way to do it, why didn't the Torah say to do it that way? Why doesn't the Torah say do Kedusha and then do Bia? That's not what the Torah says. The Torah says do Yibum. So there are those who learn that that even though Maimer is with the Rabbanan assessed that this is what the Torah really wanted us to do. And we'll see why. Also, Maimer Ubal Harezu Kimitzvasa. Zokt Gemara Lema Messiah Le Rav Huna. This should be a riot to Rav Huna. So Rav Huna, Mitzvah Yivama, the right way to do the Mitzvah of Yibum is Mekadesh. First do a Kedushin, and then the Achakach boil, and only then should you do Bia. Don't go jump straight into bed. Do first a ceremony of Kedushin. So if that's the case, our Mishnah seems to be a riot to Rav Huna, that this is the way to do it. And so it is in fact there a right to Rav Huna from our Mishnah? No, you don't necessarily have a right to Rav Huna. It's much like Rav Huna. We don't have a right because you could say what the Mishnah means to say is Ema af zek mitzvasa, not zek mitzvasa. Even really mitzvasa is to do Bia directly. But if you did Kedushin before, that also qualifies to be mitzvasa. Dr. Moore,
The Gemara like doesn't want to give a riot to Rav Huna.
the Gemara never wants to. In order to qualify as a riot, in the Gemara it has to be irrefutable, right? It has to be foolproof.
Because by giving a riot to Rav Huna, then we have the
peer reviewed.
then we contradict the other mandam.
That's right. Good art. So Solkadat Chamina, I would have thought. So it's poshut that the Bia will help. Why would the fact that Kedushin was made before take away from the fact that the Bia should create a Yibam? So Makibid Omar Mar, Alisa Maimer B'Yivimta. Mar said that if one does Maimer on his Yivama, Parcha Heimenu Zikas Yivamin, the Zikas of Yibam goes away. The Chalal of Zikas Erison. There's a Mandama who holds that once you do Maimer, it rips away this Yibam track and it sets a new track, the Erison track. The Chalal of Zikas Erison B'Nesuin. So because of that, Eim Alav Mitzvah Kavod. If you do Kedushin, if you do Maimer on a woman who's a Yavama, you're no longer doing the Yibam track, which means, sure, you're taking her in and you're being kind to her, but you're not doing the mitzvah of Yibam anymore. You're doing now the mitzvah of Kedushin and Nesuin. Kamash Malon, that no, even if you did Kedusha first and then you did Bia, it's still considered a Yibam. Gufa. Rav Huna, mitzvah Yivamin. How do we do Yibam? Mekadesh ve'achkach boil. That was Rav Huna's shita, like we just said. V'imbaal, the also Maimer. If you did Bia first and then you did Maimer, kana. In fact, the more imbaal was a Maimer pshita. It's like you made Kedushin to your own wife, because the Bia, of course, was kind. Dakanya beBia. Ella ema. This is what we mean to say. Imbaal beloy Maimer kana. If you made Bia without any Maimer, you're going to be kind. Frank the Gemara, if you're boiled without Maimer, you're kind of. But Tanya like it. We learned that if someone even by Yibam does Bia without doing Maimer first, we're going to give him Malchus. Dr. Gemara, that's not Malchus Deraisa, it's Malchus Mardus Midirabonam. We're going to give a guy, if a guy does Yibam and doesn't do Maimer before, we're going to give him Malchus. Why? The Rav Mangit Mande Mekadosh Bia. If someone made Kedushin with Bia, Rav would give him Malchus. And the Gemara is going to tell us it's Mishum Pritzusa. It's not appropriate that when you're starting a relationship with a woman, that's how it gets started. The right way to start it is with a Kedushin. You ease into the relationship. You don't get physical immediately. It's not appropriate.
What about the Adus aspect of it? You know, when you do a normal Kedushin there, we need Adam and all that, which makes her, there's a call that she's an Ashes Ish. What about the Yibun and Maimer and all these things? Do you need Adam for that?
Well, you do have to have Ede Yichud, right? That's why the Ede Kedushin by Chasana, their job doesn't end after they break the fast.
Right. So
they
is
have
there
to go and stand by the Yichud room? Because when you see them secluded in a room, you can assume that there was Bia. They don't actually have to see the Bia.
Okay, but an edus is necessary for mimer and yibum. Is that what you're saying?
Not for Yibum, but for Kedushin, edus are necessary.
So how do you establish that she's an Ashes ish? You need.
What do you mean? What do you mean? How do you establish? She becomes, if Kedushin is done properly, she becomes an Ashes ish.
So a Kedushin is necessary with yibum then?
No, I'm talking about on the marriage track. On the Yibum track, no edim are required. Nothing are required. A bia will automatically make her an Ashes ish, even without any edim at all.
What about, so are edim necessary?
No.
Which is a little weird, isn't it?
Well, Yibum is an interesting mitzvah, right? It's a bia, even a bia without any das. Even if he falls on her, so it wasn't even a purposeful bia, it's still going to work. So Yibum is an anomaly. It's a chiddush, a Torah.
Oh, it's a big chiddush, okay. Because if she was mizaneh, if the Yavama was mizaneh.
After she did Yibum?
Yeah, but there are no edim that she did Yibum. So how can you?
So that's a different story. She's considered an Ashes ish. The question is can you prove that she's an Ashes ish in order to kill her if she was mizaneh afterwards? That could be for there. We would need edim that there was a Yibum done. But that doesn't mean it impacts the validity. It's just to provide the facts.
Even to make her usher to her husband, forget about killing her. In other words, it seems a little more wishy-washy than a regular. The
chalois is done automatically without edim, but for proof of the facts, you always need edim.
So we don't. It's not as nearly as solid as a regular kedushin.
Well, you have to understand. that when edim come and say that an Ashes was zinsa, you don't need edim that saw the kedushin. It doesn't need to be the edim kedushin to come and say she's zinsa. If a woman is huchsaka to be married, in other words, there's many people in Toronto that I know are married, but I was not by their wedding. I have no edus from anybody that I didn't see their wedding video, but I know they're married, right? So if Aiden come and say it's huchsuk this as a couple, and then she was mizana, that would be enough to kill her, to make her usher to her baal.
And what about the ksuva? Does she still have her original husband?
The Gemara is going to discuss exactly how that works today.
Okay.
How that ksuva works. Okay, so let's see. I'm sorry.
One thing. Maybe the bia of a yavama works just like any other kinyan works. You have Mashiach. Does the kinyan Mashiach need Aiden? No, he's kind of. So bia, what more way do you show that? Do you act that this is your wife than by being?
No, I understand, but that's not how the bia of even works. Because it's not working with Torah or regular kinyan. Because you don't have to have kavanah. Even if you made a bia by mistake, if you made a Mashiach by mistake, I don't think it's a kinyan. But if you made bia by mistake, it's also a kinyan by even. It's a chiddush Torah. Could be Kiddushay Bia would be explained that way. But Yibum doesn't work like Kiddushay Bia. So Zok the Gemara, the Rav Mangid Mandam Mekadosh Bia. Rav would give Malchus to someone Mekadosh Bia, and Rashi says, Mishum Pritzusa, it's not fine, it's impossible. Mandam Mekadosh Beshuka. Someone who would make Kiddushin in the street. Zok Rashi, Afilu Bakaspa, even if you do Kiddushay Kesef, the Minig Zilus or Pritzasi. The marriage by Klal Yisrael is a very holy union, and to not to vilify, to be mezalzel in it, by just doing it on the street is not appropriate. Anybody who went through yeshiva probably at one time or another had a mock wedding in yeshiva. I remember when they made a mock wedding once in Philadelphia. I'm not even going to tell you who married who. It was very current because there's no women in yeshiva, so I'm not going to tell you who married who was the husband, who was the kala. But the Revelia freaked out when he found out about it. Not because of the Hoylus. He says, how do you make a game, a joke, out of such a Heiligazach, the union of a man and a woman? It's one of the holiest things. It should never be fodder for fun or for entertainment.
Did you ever laugh?
Of course he did. He had a very good sense of humor. Yeah, sure.
What?
But there are certain things, for marriage is not a laughing matter. Marriage is a dovish b'kedusha, and it's a mock wedding is highly inappropriate. I don't mean to bring a ride from rebellion to the Gemara. The Gemara, Baruch Hashem, could stand on its own. It doesn't need rebellion as a support. Yep. Zok to Gemara. Now we thought it was a harmless. We had a very fun night. It was a harmless night. All you really gave it us. Zok to Gemara weiter. Uman de bekadish below sheduche. One is bekadish without sheduche. In other words, literally, it's like a one-night stand. One who just it's like in Las Vegas. You just meet a woman and you go to the chapel and you get married on the spot. That's not appropriate. It has to be something that's built up to. It has to be a relationship that's built up, and then it gets physical. But first, it has to be done properly. Uman de mevatel gita. And someone who's mevatel get. Imagine someone sends a get with a shliach to his wife, and then says, "I'm mevatel the get." So the halacha is that get's not a good get, but she thinks she got a get because the shliach delivered it. That's a horrible thing to do to a wife, and therefore, Rav will give malchus for someone who did that. Uman de maser mardaya gita. What if somebody before he writes the get, he says, "Listen, I'm sort of being forced to write this get. I'm being pressured to write this get, but I want you to know, I don't mean to write this get," which means it's a apostle again. So someone who does that again gets malchus because he's messing somebody up. He's going to end up being mochilaz on her. Okay. I'm sorry.
I find it interesting that the same punishment that's given to a man who basically corrupts a woman and she doesn't even know about it, right, with this get business, is the same punishment that we give for somebody to be mizalzel marriage. I mean, it's nice. I understand to be mizalzel marriage, but it seems to be a much greater sin.
Well, they're all called malchus mardus, right? These are not the rice malchus. These are malchus that the bezdin has a right to give, and there's a whole Torah about it. How many malchus is it? Is it 40 malchus like regular malchus? Is it less? There's a lot of Torah on what malchus mardus are.
Some is less and some is more.
Could be. They gauge it according to what needs to be done. But it does say makanoise actually teitze nafshay. So it could be depending on what teitze nafshay is. And uman the poker shlicha derabon. Someone who is disrespectful to a shliach derabon. Now this could be a shliach derabon who's calling someone to the Torah. It could be a shliach derabon who's delivering information. And as a matter of fact, the Chazal made a gzeira that normally an erechot is never neman. A shliach derabbanan, a yochid alone is neman. Imagine he goes to deliver a psak and he gets beaten up.
That happened. That happened with some people went to a marriage party.
But if there's nobody else there, who's going to say edus? He is neman. He is neman as an eid echad to bezdin, because otherwise it would be pretty difficult to get people to work as a shliach bezdin.
Came back to his rebbe, Reb Nosson Adler, with a bruise on his face that the Fusman Kala beat him up. Right, when Nosson Adler asked him to tell them to be quiet because they were having shear, and Nosson Adler blew a shofar, right, and they dropped in.
Wow. Uman, so he did more than Makas Mardis.
Yeah.
Uman the shoyi shamta derabana le tosin yoimin below asal levedina v'toval l'shamte. And someone who was put into cherem because he was refusing to listen to Bezdin, and he let it go for 30 days without coming to Bezdin and asking them to release him from the cherem by complying. If he didn't care, he sort of ignores the cherem. That's also a reason why he would get fetched. And now it's getting interesting. And an Adam who lives with his in-laws. If someone lives with his in-laws, he used to get Makas Mardis. Now, of course, that only means if he's living there because there's some type of illicit relationship between him and his mother-in-law. Let's say someone lives by his in-laws to save money on rent. That's 100% the Poskum Matter, that 100%. As a matter of fact, Shlomo Zalman Auerbach lived by his in-laws in Rechavia when he first got married as well, because it's very hard to make ends meet. So this only means if you're doing it and it's an improper type of arrangement. Zakt Gemara, the Darin, right, you only got Malchus if you live there, but the Chalaf law, if you just came to visit, that you wouldn't get Malchus for, at least not from Bezdin. Frank the Gemara, Vahahu the Chalaf above the Vechamoy, the Nagde Rabsheshes. There was a story where someone just went to visit his mother-in-law and Rabsheshes gave him Malchus. So tomorrow that wasn't the regular case. Who made them have a dayim mechamte? There was already rumors about inappropriate things that were going on between him and his mother-in-law. Rashi's chashuda haisa chamoisa mimenu. There was a chashad over there, so that's why Rabsheshes punished someone for just visiting. Zogt Gemara weiter. Nardoi Amri v'chulu imangid Rav ela l'mekadosh bebia uvelosh. Rav didn't give malchus for any of these things in the list. The only thing on the list that he gave malchus for was someone who was mekadosh bebia without shidduchim, which means literally they met and a second later they're in a hotel room. That's what he gave malchus for. Because Amri afilu b'shidduchim nami mishum pritzisa. And there are those who hold that Nardoi said Rav gave malchus if someone is mekadosh bebia, even if there was preparation in shidduchim before, it was still inappropriate to start the marriage with a bia. Taner Rabban, Kate said Maimer. Exactly how does Maimer work? Zog to Gemara, Nosen la kesef or shava kesef. He gives her kesef and shava kesef, and he says, "I read mekadeshly b'tabasu kadesh Moshe v'Yisrael," similar to a regular kedushin. Rashi says, "Kesef and shava kesef." V'amar la skacheli b'Maimer Yavaman. He said, "You should be miskadosh to me with Maimer of Yavaman." V'avagav the Yov lomidi. Even though he's giving her cash value, lav kedushin gemurin heim ki kedushin toyer. It doesn't act like a regular kedushin. Shara ain't kedushin toyfsin be'eshesach. So you might ask, so I did kedushin on a yavama, big deal. So it doesn't work al tivum. Why can't it just work as an independent kedushin? Zok Rashi, it can't work as an independent kedushin because kedushin is not toyfis in chayve krisos, and this is eshesach. And the method of how you marry this woman is not like you would marry a regular woman with kedushin. And what is that? So kedushin has zero impact. Kedushin has zero impact on the yavama, but Maimer is what the Rabbanan said would have an impact. Uvishtar, how does star work? Ketat b'shtar. Frank Gemara, ketat. What do you mean ketat b'shtar? It's portion. The same way you're telling us to follow the normal rules of kedushin with kesef, you would follow the normal rules of kedushin with star. So Gemara kedamran, we know exactly how you make kedushin with the star. Kasav la'al nayar ayel acheres. If you wrote on a piece of paper or even on a shard, you wrote haret b'kedushin li b'shtar zu kedash Moshe v'Yisrael. Abu b'shein bo shava pruta, even though it didn't have the value of a shava pruta. Because if it had the value of a shava pruta, then never mind the star value, the cash value would be valid. So even if it didn't have a shava pruta, so it's only the star value, harayat mikudeshesli, it will work. So oibezoi, what does it mean when the Gemara asks ketat b'shtar? Amar Abaye hachi kamar. So this is the answer. What David Dalty asked earlier is how does the ksuba work? How does the ksuba work with the yavama? So Amar Abaye, this is what the Brayso means to say. Exactly what is the ksuba that the yavama gets? Normally, you write a ksuba by a kedushin. How does the ksuba work over here? Zok the Gemara, Law, he writes the following ksuba. Ana ploni bar plonis. Me. Kabilas yas planis yivamti alai. I'm accepting this yavama, this woman upon myself. Lazun ulefarnisa, to support her, karoyu, the way it's supposed to be done. However, I am not obliging my assets. There will be no lien on my assets to cover this responsibility. Whose assets are liened to fulfill this responsibility? The assets that are liable to pay for this, if I don't come up with the cash, will be the assets of my late brother. I'm sorry? No, he has to pay for it. But what if he doesn't have the money and then she has to go to Bezdin and collect? So she cannot collect from his field. She can collect from her late husband's field. Like we said before, because this is Isha Hiknu Lo Min HaShamayim.
Doesn't he yarshin? Does he not yarshin that? The brother?
Yes, he does. Well, he does yarshin them, but the portion of his assets that he now has that are committed to pay the loan, the push came to shove, were only those assets, but his own original assets would be lien free. So even if he defaults on his responsibilities to her, Bezdin would not be able to take from his assets. So
if it becomes his assets, if the brother's assets become his assets, there's no separation between the two.
The separation is that it's as if someone takes a loan and he puts up property A as a collateral for the loan, but not property B. So he owns now A properties, which were his brothers originally, and B properties, which were his. So the A properties have a lien, the B don't.
Okay.
The Isla Marisha, the Lesla Marishan, what if there are no assets for her to collect from? Then Takina Rabbanon, the Rabbanon made a takana that Misheni, then his assets will become liable. Why? The Rabbanon don't want to make it easy for someone to willy-nilly give a get. A get's only going to be given after much consideration. If there's thousands of dollars involved, you think twice. It's like the famous story where somebody asked his wife after 30 years, what can I buy you for your anniversary? It's our 30th anniversary. She says, I put away a lot of money. So I want to buy you something really special, like a car, like a really hush of a gift. What would you like, honey? So she said, I'd like a divorce. He said, I put away a lot of money, but not that much. So that's the whole verse. Since a divorce is so expensive, it makes someone think 3 times before he will give a get. Zok the Gemara weiter. So I want to share with you. I'll put it on my WhatsApp, on our WhatsApp group later. Is Moish Weinberg sent me a picture of a document. It seems like in the olden days, what I mean like 150 years ago, because this document is from about 150 to 200 years ago. One of the grandfathers in the Weinberg family. It seems like it was standard when a man got married, there was always a fear that if he would die without children, the wife would become an aguna because she would need yibum, right? And what if the brother won't be willing to do the chalitza or will ask for money? What if the brother that dies is very wealthy and the other brother wants money to do the chalitza? There was always that fear that there would be extortion. So by the marriage contract, it was like a prenup. By the chasana, it's a big covered. He gets krisak noyim, krisak suba. They call the brother up. You get to sign this prenup agreement, and he's mechayev himself. He's mechayev himself to do the chalitza immediately with 0 delay after 3 months, of course, because we learned that a chalitza is not kosher until 3 months, without any delay, without asking for a penny. The star says, "I won't ask for a penny." It doesn't just say, "I won't ask for money," but I won't even ask for a pruta. It's very specific. And then it says, and if I'm not going to do chalitza right away, I'm going to support her until I do chalitza. I don't know who made up the star, but it's very interesting to see the star. It's actually signed. I'll put it on the WhatsApp. Rabbi Weinberg gave me permission to put it up on the WhatsApp.
With all that preparation, they still didn't really keep her safe. Because if this guy goes to Medina Sayyad, then 200 years ago, people disappeared every day. They were all disappearing.
They did what they could. Yeah. So let's see the Gemara.
They could have said that something was null and void, like the real prenups today.
Okay, Zok the Gemara weiter. Boy minay Abaye may Rabba. Abaye had a shayla from Rabba. Nosen lo get. What if he gave her a get? The Omar harayat megureshes heimeni v'iat muteres l'chalodam. So we know the Chazal made a gzeira. If you give a get, it makes it usher to do yibum. What if I gave a pasul a get? The whole thing is a gzeira, right? Really, a get has no impact. It's a gzeira, therefore they say that after get you can't do yibum anymore. So what if he gave her a pasul a get? What's the halacha? Do you say get yivama de rabbanan who? Get the mahani be'eshes ish mahani be'yivama? Get the loy mahani be'eshes ish loy mahani be'yivama? Do you say what type of get did Chazal Goizer will ask for someone to do yibum? Dafka, a get that would have been a valid get by a regular woman. But if it's not even a get by a regular woman, it will have no impact on the zika. Idilma, no, once we're making xeris, even an invalid get would create a problem and would ask for the yibum. People won't make a distinction between this pasul get and the regular get. So Amalei Rabba answered, Chashinan Dilma Asal Chlufa Begita. That means even if you give a woman a pasul get, then why was it a pasul get? Because it says Hareza Gitech. What was the lashon? The iat muteres l'haladim. This is your get, but you can't marry anybody else with it. But that's a pasul get. A kosher get is that you can marry whoever she wants, not that you're still usher to marry anyone. Even such a get, which is of course not a valid get, even such a get would pasul chalitza because of would pasul from yibum. Maskav lo Rabba Bar Chanan Elamayata. If you're giving such a get validity, so what if Yoiv lo niyar b'alma? If what's the difference between a blank piece of paper and a non-kosher get? Once you're saying that you're choshed, so be choshed for blind. So of course, we're trying to master it fast. A blank piece of paper, no one's going to mistake for a get. But what if someone just wrote Hareza Gitech? He wrote a nusach that's even less than a full get. Very simple. He wrote something very simple. It's clearly not a kosher get. Hachanami, the pasla. Are you going to say that that will also pasla? Zok the Gemara, the litmus test as to what it constitutes enough of a get for the Rabbanan to be geyser to Asher Bia, to Asher Yibum after that point is totally in what will pasal a woman lekahuna. Amalei hasam like pasal lekahuna. If you just wrote 2 words on a piece of paper and you gave that to a woman, she would not be pasal lekahuna. But hagaka pasal lekahuna. So we're going to learn that a grusha is also to marry a kohen. But not only is a grusha also to marry a kohen, if a woman received something that even had a reach a get, if it even smelled like a get, which means it's not a kosher get, but it smells like a get, she can no longer marry a kohen. So any get that would be considered a reich get, that would disqualify a woman from marrying a kohen, such a get, the Rabbanan were geyser that after such a get you can't do evil. The tiny we learned, the isha gerusha meisha lo yikach, a woman who's divorced from her husband. Well, who else is divorcing a wife other than her husband? So meisha is an extra word. So we learn from there, afilu lo nisgasha ela meisha. Even if she was only divorced from her husband, but she was not motor l'chol adam, in other words, she got a parcel to get, still a kohen may still not marry such a woman. This is the famous reich haget that we know disqualifies a woman from marrying a kohen, even if she received a parcel to get. For instance, what would be the case? A woman got a get from her husband that was a parcel to get, and then her husband died. So technically, she's an almana. She's not a grush. This woman may not marry a kohen, because she got what's called a reich haget. So whatever would qualify as a reich haget would also make it usher to do evil. Amar Rami Bar Chama. So Rami Bar Chama said, Hari Amru, they said, Amar Echad L'Lavler. If someone told a sofer, Kisvu get la rusasi, talking about a prenuptial agreement, he made condition on the woman. Before he made the zuin, he told a sofer, do me a favor, write me up a get. It's good to have. I want to prepare a get in my pocket. It's much easier to get married to a woman if I know I have a way out. Because once I do Nisuin, I want to give her a get. The halach is Hareza get. It's a good get. You know why? Right now she's Mikudeshes. A woman who's Mikudeshes, you can technically give a get to. So therefore, that get will be a good get. Yeah, and but if you gave it to a woman who you didn't make kedushin on yet, but you're planning to do kedushin, there it's ein get. You know what? Right now, you can't give her a get because right now you're not even mekudeshes. What if you gave? So Rashi's kosel kodim shekansa before you made bia, before you were kodesh to your vama, but there is a relationship of zika here. You wrote this get. So this brother-in-law who was going to do yibum, before he did yibum, he went to a sofer and said, do me a favor, write me up a get so that I can divorce her after I do yibum. Ma what's the do you say kivun da gidabe karusa seidamya? Since right now he's connected to her, there's a zika, so we consider it like an arusa. And when you write a get for arusa, that's a good get. Or no, since he didn't do mimer yet, there is not enough of a relationship to say that the get will be chal. Take the Gemara box will take. Cause of get was we learned that you can channel the get. It doesn't have to be a full get. You can write, I only want to discharge the zika, but I don't want to discharge my mimer. So a guy went to make mimer on a woman, and then that means now there's a zika and there's a mimer, and he says, I want the get only to be for the zika, not for the mimer. Or in the mimer, I only want the get to undo the mimer that I did, but I still want the zika to remain. Ma what's the law? Do you say mimer ilu zika karami? Do you say that the mimer is not a standalone independent kedushin? The mimer just it bonds and it fuses with the zika to make it a stronger relationship, and therefore you cannot possibly now break this relationship apart, take away half of the relationship, not the other half. That's like you being megarish half of the echos of the woman. That would not be a get at all. Say the zika is one relationship, and the relationship created by the mimer is a completely standalone, independent relationship, and therefore the get could be focused on one or the other. Oh, very good. Zok Gemara. The Tim showed like me the Rava. Why did you bring a raya from Rava that in fact it's two different relationships and they get you the work? Dama Rava, nothing get lemamaray. We learned earlier that if someone only gave a get for the mimer, so the halacha is so now he's not connected to her anymore. So now he can make yibum on somebody else. Put to Taras, he's allowed to do yibum to somebody else. So you see the get worked for the mimer, yet it didn't break the zika. So Kumar, you're right. L'Rava pshitale. Rava actually holds two separate relationships, and therefore it would work. But Rav Chananya Rav Chananya didn't know. So the Gemara vibes the tape. He made chalitza, which means there's no zika there at all, and then he made a mimer. Rav Yehuda, Rav. So what was the halacha by chalatz v'asa mimer? If he made chalitza, then he made mimer. The Mishnah says, "Ein achar chalitza klum." That means he doesn't need a get for the mimer. Why doesn't he need a get for the mimer? What's the problem if he makes kedushin on a woman who is chaylitz? There's an issue of kivin shaloi bana shul yivna. There's an issue of is kedushin not toifus b'chai b'lavan? Zok Gemara zu divrei Rabbi Kiva. This must be going to Rabbi Kiva. The Amar ain't kedushin toifus b'chai b'lavan. We had this before already. Yeah. But the Chachamim hold that kedushin is toifus b'chai b'lavan. It's just not toifus on chai b'krisis. So therefore, yesh achar chalitza klum. Even after chalitza, you can do a kedushin because kedushin is chal on chai v'lav. Can you possibly say that our Mishnah is going according to Rabbi Kiva? We had all this already that we're learning. This is all chazorah. But Katani Reisha, we learned at the beginning of our Mishnah, Nasan get vasa mimer. What if he gave first a get and then he made mimer? So the halacha is tzricha get. He'll need a get because to discharge the mimer that he did, and then he'll need chalitza to discharge the original zika. The Rabbi Kiva. If our mission is going according to Rabbi Kiva, keeping the Yavla get, once he gave her a get, now there's already an Easter of Lo Yibana. So Mimahani b'Maimer, the Maimer shouldn't have helped at all. So why do I need a get for the Maimer? The Maimer should never have been Chal, because the Maimer was done already when she was asked to marry him because of Lo Yibna. But Tanya we learn, Rabbi Kiva Aimer, Minayin L'Noisin get Li'avimtoi, Shenesra Lo V'Lamas. How do you know that if you gave a get to a Yavama, that Midai Raisa, she's asked him, not Midai Rabbanah like we've been learning until now. But you give her a get, the get has a derisive impact. That she's also. This is by the parsha of Machshir Rishosai. It says "Layuchal Ba'al Rishon" to take her back. Why did the pasuk have to say "Layuchal Ba'al Asher Shilcha"? The original husband who sent her away. We know the story. We know she was sent away. So the word Asher Shilcha is extra. So we learn Acher Shiluach that even by a Yavama that got a get, she's also midaraisa with a lav on the oven. So if that's the case, according to Rabbi Kiva, kedushin is not toifus. So why do you need a get for the mimer? Amar Ravashi, get yivam midirabon and the cross machta ba'alma. It's not really a deraisa. Sure, he makes a drasha, but that's just an asmachta. It only needs midirabon. So of course, Rabbi Kiva holds in kedushin toifus b'chai v'elaven, but on the izid rabbanon, kedushin would be toifus. That's why you need mimer. Tanya nami hochi. We learned the brisa that supports this thought. Amar Rabbi, einad var malalu amurim elo divrei Rabbi Kiva. This that kedushin is not typhus by Chai V'Lavan only goes according to Rabbi Kiva. He treated the chalutza who has an isser lav like an erba, and kedushin won't be typhus. After chalitza, you could make a kedushin, and it would be Chai V'Lavan, but it would be typhus, and you would need a get. And I say, Amosai. When do you say that it works? That the kedushin works on the chalutza is bisman shekitcha l'shomishos. If the kedushin that he made was to create a new relationship of marriage, that's where I say kedushin types of mechayv elav. But what if he said when he was mekadesher that I don't want to make you a regular marriage? I want this to be a mimer. I want it to be a kedushin of yavama. So zokt the Gemara there ain't that's not a good kedushin because no, he went to a yavama. He went to a yavama that he did chalitza to already. So there's no more zika. And he said, I don't want to give you a regular kedushin. I want to give you the kedushin of Maimer. No, that's impossible because there's no chazika left. Like Rashi says, Abba Kitchel Shom Yavamis ain't in kedushin. That's not a good kedushin at all because he's trying to do an impossible thing. So ain't kan tzad yibam. There is no yibam over here because there's no more zika. It's all over. Therefore, Abba kedushin dois. Tanya we had another brayso. Somebody made chalitza. So now the relationship is done. There's no more zika. The chazer v'kitcha, and then he made kedushin again. Rabbi says in kitchel Shom Ishos. If he made kedushin l'shomishus, which means I want to start a new relationship, a new kedushin, then tzricha menu get. He needs a get because kedushin is types of mechai v'lavan. But l'shom yivamas, if he says I want to do yibam, I want to make mimer for a yibam, there is no zika here. The mimer, what he's asking for is impossible to do, and therefore ain't tricha himenu. The chacham mimer ben shekitchel shemishus ben shekitchel shem yevamas tricha meniget. They all know regardless it would be chal like a regular kedusha. Rabbi Yosy, my time of the Rebbe. What is far of Rebbe who says it doesn't work? Because asua ka'oider b'nichsei ager u'chashav shalohin. The halach is if a ger dies and he has no children because a ger is kekatan shenoyel dami. So anybody who's zoiche in his assets first grabs it, gets to keep it, right? But what if your next door neighbor is a ger and he dies and you're working on what you think is your field, but you're really across the border, you're really in his field. So you're doing a chazaka on his field. But you don't know that you're doing a chazaka because you think you're working in your own field. So the halach is the loy kanya. You're not kanya because it's not in the act of making a chazaka when you think you're working in your own field. So that's what Rebbe is trying to say. If you try to make a kedushin of a yibum, but it doesn't work, there's no yibum here, so it doesn't work. Right. So that's not a good comparison. In the case of when you're being ordered there by your neighbor, you're not trying to make any kinyan at all. However, here I want to be kind to her. I'm just misguided in how the kinyan is supposed to work. So maybe there it will work. So the way I would compare Rabbi's halacha of why this doesn't work is he didn't realize that this field belongs to ger A. It really belongs to ger B, and he wanted to be kinded, but he thought he was being kinded from ger B, and really was from ger A. The Kani, there he is Kani. So if that's the case, how do we understand Rebbe why the condition doesn't work? I'll explain to you why the condition doesn't work. If you wanted to do it l'shem yibam l'shem maimer according to Rebbe, I want this to be a mimer only. So I want it to be a mimer only. Rebbe Savar mimer ili zika karam. Rebbe holds that mimer only works if there's a zika there for the mimer to work upon. But the problem is, before you made this mimer, you had done chalitza already. So therefore, there is no place for your mimer to be chal. The yibum and the kedushin of mimer and the zika are two independent relationships, and therefore you could do even the kedushin of mimer, even though there's no zika, because it's a standalone thing. Meikara before chalitza, before the chalitza, had he said, be miskadeshes to me with ma'ami yavamim, it would have worked. Hashanami mahani, here, therefore it'll work even after there's no more zika after the chalitza, because that kedushin is a standalone thing. Even the kedushin of ma'ami yavamim is a standalone thing, and therefore it will work even after chalitza. Rava says, Ida Amalar b'ma'amar Yavamin. If he spoke out b'ma'amar Yavamin, Kula Amalai pligi d'mahani. Everybody would agree that it does work because maybe ma'amar is a standalone thing. The reason why Rabbi holds it doesn't work is the going to Amar Law is kachali b'zika shivam. I wanted b'davka to be the zika. That is no longer here, and therefore Rabbi says, we'll stop here and we'll be mamshech tomorrow. It's already 6:53. And we're ahead of the game. I'm not going to push it. Okay, so we'll stop here. Thank you very much. And Mitcham, we will be mamshech tomorrow. Today's Gemara was much easier, and it was also like interesting. We were learning about being mekadesh